Okay, this tutorial is on MAGNIFi for Premiere Pro. So let's get started. First thing is you want to have a clip to work with. So I have one here. Open that up, and then you want to mark in and out points on the area you want to work with. So in point and out point, and we're going to be targeting this plane in our effect. So next you want to create a sequence. And the easiest way to do that is to use this little icon here. Just take your clip and drag it onto this little icon. So click, drag and drop, let go. And that will create a sequence using all the properties of the clip you just dragged down there. So frame rate, size, all that good stuff. It's all automatically set. So that's the easiest way to do that. And next you want to apply the effect. So go to your Effects tab. If you don't have an Effects tab, go to Window and make sure Effects is checked. All right, next go to Video Effects, go down to dTective and find MAGNIFi. And there's two ways to apply the effect. One is to drag and drop to the video like that. Let's undo that. You can also just double click. Okay, and that applies the effect. And once the effect is applied, you want to go to the Effect Controls. So that tab is up here. If you don't have this tab, go to Window and choose Effect Controls. Okay, now if I click on the MAGNIFi effect itself in the Effect Controls, that will enable me to be able to drag and drop my target and output boxes. So first we'll move the output box out of the way, put it up here. And then we will move the target box down to our target, which is the airplane. And then once that's selected, you can grab these edges, the little handles, and then resize the box to really zero in on your target. Just like that. And then we can move the output box over again, maybe over here. And the same thing here, you can actually resize by clicking the edges here, little handles, and resize the output box, just like so. Okay. Okay, so that's all set up, and now we'll go through the settings. So first, you have your target. Source is the position. So this is left and right. If you click and drag the numbers, you can adjust. You can also click here and type in a number. So highlight it, use your number pad, and then type a number in, push enter, and that applies it. So, and that's the same as clicking and dragging. You see the numbers change as I click and drag. So that's all the same. You can drag, you can highlight, type in, or just click and drag that way. Okay. And this is your Y coordinates. So same thing there. So these are basically your X and Y coordinates on the source. All right. Size, that's the size of the target box. So if we twirl this down, you'll see if I drag these edges that the size changes. So same thing here, you can actually highlight the number, click and drag that way, or use the slider, click and drag. And those all do the same thing. Aspect. Aspect is the aspect ratio of your video file. But we can actually change the aspect by dragging this slider here. So you can go really wide, or you can go square if you want. And you see as I do that, it's affecting the output box as well. Okay. But we'll keep this at 1, which is fine. All right, border. Somewhat self-explanatory, but there are a bunch of controls here we can play with. First is size. Right now we have no border. It's just set to 0. But if I drag the slider over, you'll start to see a border appear. And there it is. The default color is green. Or in the same thing here, you can click and drag in the size that way. Or highlight it and type a number in. And then for the color, click on the color itself and the color picker appears. You can choose a color this way by dragging around in here, or If you want to use the color picker to pick a color in your video itself, click on the color picker and then drag anywhere you want. Maybe you want this green from the grass. And then it doesn't appear until you click OK. So you'll see the colors picked here, but the target border will not change color until you click OK. And now you see it did. So we'll change that back to a bright green. And then opacity, twirl this down. Opacity is the opacity of the target border. So you can change the slider, drag that over, anywhere from 0 to 100 and anything in between. And again, highlight the number, type it in if you want, use the slider this way, left and right, all the same controls here. Okay. And then going down to the output, that's the output box, which is here. And again, XY coordinates, so left and right. This is just the position of the box itself. And Y is up and down. Size, that's the size of the output box. Same thing here, you can click and drag the slider. You can highlight and drag, or highlight and type in a number. So, something like that. All right, put that back. Aspect, same as this, same as it was for the target. It's the aspect ratio of the, in this case, the output box. So a similar deal happens here where you drag it and it gets affected by the slider. Okay. And this correlates as well to if I drag this way and then I change the aspect of the target, you see it gets affected. So those two work in conjunction with one another. You just sort of have to play with it if you adjust the aspect at all. So we'll put this back to 1. And that brings us to our border. Our border right now is a line. It's set to white, so it's hard to see. And the size is 3, so we'll change this to a red. And the same thing here as you saw before. There's a color picker here. And you can also choose the eyedropper and choose anywhere in your interface in your video. And pick a color that way, click OK, and then the change appears. Here's your size slider. Okay. And we'll change this back to a red. And for the output box, you have two types of borders. You have a line, which is obvious, but there's also feather. And you can see the edges are feathered. And if I click off of the effect itself and the effect controls, you can really see it a bit better. So there's your feathering happening. Let's click back on MAGNIFi, go back to the settings for the border type, and we'll change this back to a line. And we'll drop this down a little bit. So inside the box itself, the output box, there are several settings. You have a zoom control. Control this down. And this allows you to zoom in a little bit. You can go all the way up to 4, which is crazy zoomed in, or back down to 1. You can actually rotate the output itself. So if you wanted to rotate, you can just control here, or you can type in a number. So click in here, type in 45, rotates 45 degrees, and we'll put it back to 0. Okay. Brightness, contrast, gamma. These are all basically settings for the image inside the box, the output box. So brightness adjusts the brightness of the output. And then same with contrast. And then gamma, again, -100 to +100. And everything in between. Opacity affects not only the output box itself, but also the output box's border. So everything from 0 to 100. Okay. And then down here we have options for the output border shape, which is roundness. So right now we're just squared off, fully square, but you can go to the middle here and get like a more curve effect, or a full oval effect at 100. Right? And again, you can click in here, drag if you like, or type a number in. We'll set this back to 0. And then you have some other options here: color mode, output mode, aspect, and filtering. I'm going to change the output mode to 90% full. You can also do full, which is a full screen output of the output box. We're going to do 90% full, which gives you some of the background. And then I'm going to change the color mode so you can really see what's going on. So RGB is full color. I can do average of the colors. I can do luminance. I can do red, green, or blue channels. Put this back to RGB, and you can change the aspect here. We can do 4:3, 16:9, fit, and original. We'll keep it at original. And then filtering, these are mathematical filters for potentially cleaning up the image a little bit. So right now we're on point, but we can choose several mathematical filters. So triangle's one. You can see it affected the output a little bit. Quadratic, cubic, Catmull-Rom, Gaussian, and sync. So I think I'll choose triangle. Okay, and that brings us to over background. And what over background means is that if you had multiple layers of video, right now we only have one layer, but if I was to drag this up to layer or to video track 2, and we'll add another layer of video here. Now let's try this one. Go back to my MAGNIFi effects, which is now on V2. And if I was to choose over background, you'll see that, and let's change this back to quad, you'll see that the background changes to whatever is on V1. So now you can see that I'm doing over background. So this is the background track on V1, and this is the track that we're working with on V2 now. And that's what over background does. So we'll turn that off. And now we'll talk about keyframing, because you're going to want to have this target box follow the airplane as it takes off. And right now it's not following anything, so we need to apply and add some keyframes. And keyframes in Premiere are pretty simple. So we're going to do keyframes for source, which is the position of the target box, and size of the target box. So we'll add a keyframe here. This is your toggle animation button. Looks like a stopwatch. Click on that. Anything in this effect controls that has this little stopwatch toggle animation button means these are keyframable parameters. So anything in here where you see that means these adjustments are keyframable. But we're going to work with target, source, and size for now. So we've added a keyframe on source and size, and we'll drag this down to where the plane is taken off. We will add, let's go to about there. And then click on the MAGNIFi effect, and then we're just going to drag this up to follow the airplane. And you see it automatically added a keyframe because I already had one initially. And we also want to adjust the size. So we'll click on the target box's edges here and adjust the size to fit the airplane in there. And you'll see that it automatically added a keyframe for the size as well, because I already had one at the beginning. Now it's not perfect. If I was to look at this, you can see it's not following the plane exactly, so we need to adjust that. But that's easily done. Just go to where you want to adjust the target box on your timeline, click on your target box, and drag it down to keep the airplane centered. And keep doing that as you go. And you see as I do that, keyframes are getting added on the source. And we'll keep doing that until this airplane is pretty well centered. All right, so if I play that, it should remain fairly well centered in there. And turn the sound off. Oop, there we go. All right, and there you go. Those are your keyframes. Now, if you wanted to save this effect for future use, you can do that. in your effect controls, find your effect, right click, and choose Save Preset. So click on that. Make sure scale is chosen as a type, and then type in your name. We'll just call this MAGNIFi for airplane. And we can add a description following, oops, airplane takeoff. Okay. And then click OK. And that is added to your effects. And it's going to be added to your presets category here. So if I was to go in here and actually delete this entire effect and all this work we did, if I delete this, just click on the effect and the effect controls, hit delete on your keyboard, it's gone. I can go to my presets, there's the effect we created, drag it, drop it back onto my clip, and everything's back, including all of our keyframes. So you're safe there. And that is MAGNIFi in Adobe Premiere Pro.